You worked very hard on this deal, you got it all the way to the finish line, but for some reason the deal did not close. Now you're contemplating, how do I re-engage with this prospect to get them back to the table? Or is the deal done? In today's episode, we're going to give you some ideas of how you can re-engage that deal that seems like it's dead, and how you can have a thriving conversation and hopefully getting the deal back on track. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast here on TSE TV on YouTube. I am your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode, we have David Perry, and David is an author as well as he is a real-life sales professional. Believe it or not, go pinch him. But David has worked for companies such as Google, IBM, Amazon, and David is going to give us his experience, what he has done to become so successful, some of the things that work for him. And he has a new book as well, which I highly recommend. You'll get a chance to learn a little bit more about that, but it's The Sales Game. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good insights. He's going to tell us what he has learned on how you can re-engage those past prospects or clients you're working this deal with that so happened to fall apart. Anyways, let's go ahead and dive into it. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks for having me here, Donald.
Man, of course, man. I bragged about you a little bit there in a teaser. As a fellow Floridian, you know, we have something that many people don't have, and that is an understanding of humidity and of warmth. And right now in South Florida, the time of recording this episode, it's December, 15th today or something like that? 14th. And we have some very nice warm weather, and many of our friends are complaining about the snowstorm they're having. But humidity is a factor in that, man, but it's all good. How you doing today, man?
Doing very well. Happy to be here, and happy to be in Florida for the time being. While I've escaped New York, which is shutting down left and right.
Totally agree on that, man. It's so nice to be here and to enjoy it. And speaking about enjoying, one of the things that we all enjoy as sales rep is closing a good deal. I mean, I sure do. I love when it comes to a close. Unfortunately, not every time that happens. And, everyone has, like a good baseball player, we have our batting averages. But what do we do? And this is a question that came up. How do I go back and re-engage with a prospect when the deal did not close? And I want to just take a minute and just be able to pick your brain and just have a discussion as friends about this topic and give some ideas to folks who are listening on how they can re-engage and go forth with boldness and excitement. Does that sound fair enough?
It does. And, it's funny because that's a very, very deep question. And there are so many different types of situations. And, that question, as you're asking it, I mean, it kind of made me think of just about my entire book, which I just launched this past week. And I think the reason for that is that I wrote it with the sense of what are the tools that any salesperson needs as they're going about their trying to hit their number, trying to re-engage, in a deal. What are all the things that they need to do in order to be prepared for that? So, in order to re-engage that prospect, I think I first want to understand and dissect the deal a little bit. Like what is the deal based on? Who's involved on the customer side? One thing that I really am a big fan of for a lot of the strategic deals that you might be working on, something called value selling. And so there's something called so you've definitely heard of that. I'm assuming many times over. But I'd want to take a look at some
folks that have not heard of it. Why don't you just give us deviate for like a second and just explain what that
absolutely. Yeah. So every enterprise technology company has some type of sales training, and value selling is one of the trainings that enterprise sellers can go through. And what it is a value-based approach. The value prompter, which I'm referring to, is something you would create for each deal. And it's simply, it's a very simple framework on the surface, but there's a lot of power behind it. So, for example, At the top of the value prompter, you'd have your two key contacts, like people that are really going to make this deal happen. You'd have the business issue, which needs to be time bound and also measurable. So an example of that is maybe 9% growth in revenue over the course of the year. Might sound really simple, but that's actually where it's very difficult to find the right business issue if you're just coming into an account. And then you have the other boxes below. Well, there's also an anxiety question that you want to ask the customer that's going to propel them to open up and engage you in conversation. But there's also a few boxes below. The first one is problem, followed by solution, and then beneath them is value, and then plan. And there's also a section for power, and power is all the people that are involved with the deal. So I'd want to take a look at some type of framework like that. I think it'd be very helpful to conversing with another salesperson or whoever is involved with that deal, because it really helps to show where the gaps are. And so as you fill out, and like I said, there are many different types, but that's a good one. And as you look at that framework, you might say to yourself, well, it doesn't look like we really hit the business issue. We have seems like we have something here, but it's not really tied to anything, and everything is just other initiatives that the customer are taking priority over our deal, because it's not tied to executive leadership in that regard.
Going back to what your experience of selling, you were at IBM for a while and some other these other amazing organizations. What would you say over your experience? I'm putting you on the spot here, and I'm sure we can fill in a gap here. Let's say top 3 reasons why most deals don't close.
I mean, it's pretty simple. I think it comes down to lack of access to power, which is a very simple thing to diagnose, but not easy to do. I think the second thing comes down to timing or some type of exogenous event where maybe someone leaves or there's some change in the industry. And then the third one, I think, is really that that area I was talking about. Maybe there's a lack of articulation of value or tying it to key metrics like the business issue. So those are the 3 reasons why they slip or wouldn't close.
We asked the average seller, and say you're a sales leader. If you ask any sales rep, what's the first thing they're going to tell you why the deal didn't close?
Oh my God, I can't even imagine. I mean, there's so many reasons. Can't get it through procurement. I have a whole list of these things in a chapter in my book on risk. And it's just completely dedicated to trying to be able to forecast some of these things. I mean, I think any one of these things would be, an excuse. Like it got stuck in legal, it's stuck in procurement, stuck in security review, unexpected additional security review. A new vendor came in. All of a sudden, someone wants to issue an RFP. The agency doesn't want to do it. The partner doesn't want to do it. There's not budget. There's some other. I mean, it's on and on. There's so many reasons. I don't know if there's a single reason that I've heard there.
And one day I hear, you didn't say it, and this is why I thought it was so fascinating in your top 3 reasons, and it goes back to show the truth of it, is people come back and say, well, we're just too expensive. It's price. I mean, obviously are there situations in which price could be a factor? I mean, there could be, but I don't feel that majority of deals, I think it goes back. If I've had situations, man, when I wanted to get something, I'm going to figure out a way to get it. Like if there's a way that I need something, it's going to make our organization. I'll give you an example. Our website went down a number of years ago, and that's the prime source of our business. It's everything, right? Everything was online. And do you think that I moved heaven and earth and found whatever I needed to take care of that? Of course I did, because it was something that was there, and I recognized the value. Not everyone's going to be in a situation where the website is go down, but I do feel that third point that you shared, value, is something that I can admit to it, that as a seller I've overlooked at times, especially when it's an inbound lead. I'm like, okay, we got this. I don't necessarily need. They're already interested. You know what I mean? And then I don't do
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the value topic is very difficult, and it can be very deep, very time intensive. And the reason for that is that almost every customer, just has their own like unique view and perspective and tweak on the
Yeah.
value. And so you need to be able to translate that value into what can be considered as valuable for the overall organization, for each of the individuals for their own like career advancement and the personal risk they have in the situation or in that deal, and then maybe even for specific departments and even external players. So that can get complicated very, very quickly. And I also talk about in the book there are lots of different sources of value, and so some of the ones that could be pretty run of the mill, like even the types of training that they might receive, or how quickly you can get resources on the ground. All those things can be really, really valuable and help you to stand apart, even if you're a little bit more expensive or at parity with the competition.
Yeah. So true, man. Love this. Well, you said you'll start off by looking at the idea of value, and you evaluated that and so forth. But what else should we do before we re-engage with that prospect? Or is there
Right.
anything else that you would bring up to the table?
Yeah, certainly. So before we re-engage with that prospect, would want to make sure we have a clear idea as a team what the gap is. So, one of the things I always try to do, I'm constantly brainstorming with my team, with my management. If there's a deal that, has a particular issue, trying to forecast what are the additional risks that we have, if and when we do re-engage, right? Because so let's say we get back on this individual's calendar. So what, right? We need to really be ready to close the deal, to, fix whatever problem it is, to, understand why it took them some time to get back to us, and be ready for that. So you want to, when you get back to the, I'm assuming you're talking about a pretty late stage opportunity, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So you want to be able to have all those things brainstormed so you can address them with the customer. And like I said, it can be something as simple as, maybe there's a small tweak in the contract that needs to be made that you can de-risk that deal by starting it a month or two later. I mean, think about how simple that is. But oftentimes it's those like really simple things, or maybe there's a term in the contract. Maybe they want to change payment from net 30 to net 45, or just like small things, because we're in a very difficult time right now. They want to push that out a little bit in terms of payments terms. So I think all those things are what you need to get re-engaged. In terms of the actual act of getting re-engaged, if you want to focus on that, sure. I think that that's not something that knock on wood, that I've had a lot of challenge with. Like once you get really far into the deal, I think if you're having trouble re-engaging when you're that far along the line, I mean, to me that's a signal that something else went awry. Like I said, there's not the access to power that you need, or you're not showing the value, or something else. But assuming that's not the case, I think it's really good just simple email, calling, just trying to get back on the individual's calendar. And I think that's really all you need to do. I've heard of all sorts of things like, people sending gifts and inviting executives to different types of conferences. I mean, all that stuff is good and works.
Yeah, and I think go back to, I love how you preface this, like, every situation is going to be different. Every approach, we're not going to just have one silver bullet with this, but it's just spur thought. I want, when somebody listens to this and they hear that question, they have that question, they can say, okay, well, David said some ideas like this I can take advantage of. David said, try. Got me going around this side of thinking. It's kind of like college. College teach you how to learn, right? You don't get everything in college. Right. You learn how to learn, so you can take that knowledge and then re-engage that post with your experience.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, what I would certainly recommend is if that's an issue, if you're getting and I have my book in my hand right now.
Show them the book,
in my hand. So
We have it on
Oh, okay, sure.
the show notes here, but they can see it. There you go, guys. Game of
That's the
Sales.
book.
Yeah, looks good, man. I
And
love.
oh, thanks. And also you can see it on the back. There's a lot about the book, and if you look it up on Amazon, you pretty
Yeah,
quickly what the book's about. But in terms of reengaging, I think in chapter 11 there's a whole host of value sources, right? So if you look at chapter 11 and you see this list of value sources, I think that's going to give you a potential hook to reengage, because you're basically showing what's in it for the customer if they reengage with you, and will help to give you a framework, or at least like a checklist of what some of the different value sources are. So maybe a hook could be, hi so and so, we're going to be able to save your team X amount of time. If we can get this deal executed by this date, can we get back in calendar? Or we will be able to dramatically reduce the risk of X, Y, Z if we can get this going. Or we see like there's some significant regulatory change that's coming down the pike. We've got to address this right away. Let's talk about it now. It has implications for our roadmaps and for yours. So as you look through, this list, and it talked about, corporate transactions, partnerships, I mentioned personal interest training, even access to your own company, right? So maybe you really are stuck and you want to get someone senior within your own organization and offer a meeting with that individual. Maybe this person's holding out because they don't feel that your company is ready to make this level of commitment to them, and they want to get a little bit deeper within your organization, so you can offer that up. Any one of those things can be, depending upon the situation, once again, it can be very compelling for your customer to reengage.
Yeah, my goodness. And I think one of the thoughts I like about this is that it's not coming back to the table and just kind of saying, I've seen those before, and people have done this, where do we go wrong? And it's kind of like, stop being a little desperate, stop being desperate and thirsty. Like if the deal, if you could come back though with saying something like, really informative and saying, hey, Donald, I know things didn't work out. One thing I do want to, bring to attention was this business thing like you were talking about, or one of those points from chapter 11. I'm like, okay, crap, I didn't think about that. Let me listen to Elliot again and see what he got, what he has to the table, because this is something that piques my interest, as opposed to, what if I can make it cheaper? It's like, don't come with that. That's not going to be helpful. You know what I mean?
Right. That's not, yeah, I mean, sometimes it really does come down to that, but yeah, that's certainly not where you want to be. I mean, and this is another thing. I try to lay all this out in the book itself, but I firmly believe that, and it's also been through, let's say, painful experience, that you never want to give away too much to the customer, and the customer should not want to take too much from you either. And the reason for that is because it's all determined by the market, and if you end up giving a customer something for nothing, that's not going to benefit them, because over time your organization is not going to value that relationship. And similarly, as a salesperson, if you're trying to just gouge and just scoop away as much money from the customer as possible, that's not going to work out either, because something else is going to come along and knock you off. So it really has to be that the happy medium. And that's only defined as you start to understand the customer's problem, talk through what it is they need, and then try to figure out what that value is there. And if you can do all those things, as you so accurately pointed out, there will be no problem to get the deal done. And it will, rather than feeling like, and that's why I hesitate a little bit, rather than feeling like that you're trying to get the person back on the phone, there's just momentum. It's like at some point you just, you're pushing up the hill, and it's just managing down to the close, right? And it's all very prescriptive and very clearly laid out.
Yeah, no, and I think there's sometimes the deal is dead. It's just not.
Oh, that does happen. Yes.
It's no matter how much you try it, it's just not going to work right now. And it could be.
I do want to, yeah, I do want to mention something about that, about the deal being dead. Especially if it's a large and complex deal, you'll feel that you might feel that the deal is dead several times over, right? And that's just, I mean, there's so much at stake, and that's the point. Like, the deal's dead. Like, so I've actually said this. I don't know, probably a lot of times where I'm like,
Said it.
done, dead. Let's walk away. And and then I took a day just to think about it. Re-engage the team, re-engage with the customer. I'm like, I know we're at an impasse, but is there really anything we can do? And they're like, oh, well, if we do this, this, or this, then and it kind of comes, can come back to life. Or if, like I mentioned, you bring leadership in. Sometimes they have a totally different perspective, and not sometimes, all the time. And and you realize that there really are, there really are no rules. It's like, as an individual seller, sometimes you live within the box of your go-to-market construct. But the executives are going to see that there is no box, and that there might be other things that they can do. There might be something that your leadership is willing to do for that particular customer that might cost them nothing, and again be very valuable to that customer. It's like a concept of trading items of unequal value. But that's just something that you're not going to be able to make. And if you try to do it yourself without involving leadership, it could take, maybe it's going to take you a few weeks, or maybe it doesn't get done. So, but knowing how and when to bring in leadership in these types of situations, I think is really important.
You bring up a good point. One of my coaching clients, he does this a lot. He's an enterprise seller, and sometimes in the deal, he would bring in he deems it as the parents. Having the parents coming in and having a conversation sometimes, and even
Yeah.
when he did that, when he explained it, I was like, okay, that kind of sounds good. And he would talk about it if he's talking to maybe a champion, it's like, he didn't say it to this nature, but in the back office, and when we're talking, basically, does the parents know? Your parents know that we're having this discussion, essentially,
Right.
and then he brings his parent along, quote unquote, when it's appropriate. And it's amazing what will happen when they do see that your leadership sacrificed 15, 20, 30 minutes to jump on a call. It's like, okay, this can help put the deal in a different trajectory. But yeah, I've had those Frankenstein deal, and I'm just like, I've given up on it. And then it came back. It's just like, I don't know what in the world happened, but it came back, came back alive.
Yeah. It really is true. The deals, they can come back, and that's the thing. It's like, it's never a sure thing, and that's why I focus so much on risk. I think in a lot of ways you could argue that a lot of the book is just different ways of handling and diminishing risk over the course of the sales cycle. I talk about the value prompter. I talk about lots of other frameworks that, again, are different ways about different ways to handle the client relationship, to talk to the customer, to think about, even something as simple as the customer's interpretation of time or understanding of time versus yours. What if, if you're thinking weeks and months and the customer's thinking quarters and years, you're not going to have a very good conversation.
No.
So there are lots of things there. And then I talk specifically about how to have tough conversations and when you need to challenge your customer. And I boil it down to 4 or 5 different triggers that will let you know when you need to have those conversations. And then, as I mentioned, I have a whole list of risks, which are the kind of like, oh well, this happened or that happened. This is why the deal went sideways. I have those covered as well, so you can anticipate them. But actually, you mentioned something about bringing in the executives, and I think that that can be a double-edged sword, right? Mm-hmm. The executives that you're working with are unbelievably busy. They're working with 100, 1,000 people like you, right? So it's important that you have a sense for how they like to contribute, and that you bring in the right executive at the right time for the right topic. So if you don't know how an executive likes to contribute, do not consider bringing them in, or if you do, you have to make sure you understand that, because some of them just want to like have like a casual conversation, like, hey, what's up? Yeah, or some of them want to get like, super into the weeds. Some of them want to talk about, the specifics of the contract. Like, there could be lots of different, styles, and you need to make sure you match that to the situation. That's number one. But you also want to make sure you're making an ask of the executive. Yeah. So what can this executive do? You should know that going into the meeting, and maybe that the executive can't make that thing happen, but at least he knows that's or she knows that's what you're thinking. The next thing is to make sure to highlight the risks for the executive, right? The worst thing you can do, imagine you're brought into a deal and they mention something about, let's say, the implementation scoping process. Yeah. And that is, and they're, now keep in mind, they're asking 20 other questions. It's just an open conversation. And you can, as an executive, you can accidentally sink the deal by not knowing that that's a landmine, right? So you've got to let the executive know of like the key risks and landmines ahead of time. And then finally, what's the outcome, right? Like what are you expecting to happen as a result of this meeting, as for you and your team and the company? And then if you can get those things nailed, you should be in really good shape to bring in a senior executive.
Love it, man. So, we talked about that. You mentioned a book a little bit, but I want to know if folks want to go and find a book, where can they go find it, and tell us about, why you wrote the book right now.
Yeah. So it's been working on it for a long time, but you can find it on Amazon.com. It's available for Kindle and also paperback. Fortunately, it hit #1 bestseller in sales and sales management, sales and selling technique, planning and forecasting, and yeah, it's been a really incredible launch week. But to answer your question, why did I write the book now? I've actually been working on it for quite some time. The pandemic definitely threw me for a loop. It was unbelievably intense at work. I was going to have a huge book launch party in New York City, and obviously that can't happen. So instead of having a big party, I launched to blips and LinkedIn notifications, and so that was the launch. Certainly not as exciting, I guess, but it was still a really nice feeling, and it was cool to see the book go up in the rankings on Amazon. But if I think about why I really wrote the book, I guess in retrospect, I wrote it for somebody that is, let's say they're 25 years old. They're trying to figure out, how do I cement myself at a higher level, or if I'm a sales manager, like what is something I want to give my team to just give them a boost. And that's really what I wrote it for. But now that it's done, and I've heard so many feedback from startup CEOs or sales leaders, individual contributors, it's that I think it's really the book that I wish I had when I was coming up, right? And so now it's out there for people to use, and I also realized there's very little written about this space, which was kind of shocking. Like, I don't know if there's any other. I don't know if there's any other book like this, written by an individual contributor that has this that goes through the different companies and so forth. Like, most of these books are written by ex-CEOs or consultants that maybe they haven't really sold that much, right? So I did this while I was in the field. Very, very intense, very intense work experience and so forth. And I'm what I'm hearing, and this is just first week, right? It's first week it's out. Maybe it will be different, but that people are really, really loving it because it's so real and gritty, and there's no fluff at all. It's just stories about what you need to become successful.
Love it, man.
In enterprise technology sales. Yeah.
Well, I think this is awesome, and especially many of the sellers fall in that category. So we love it, and we'll go ahead and put it in our show notes and make sure folks can get access to it. If folks want to get touch with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
LinkedIn for sure. So you can just look me up on LinkedIn, David Perry. Type in Adobe, Google, Amazon. I'll probably come up.
Well, David, appreciate you coming on the show. Appreciate your wisdom, man. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Yes, that was David Perry, and you can go ahead and connect with him and check out his book. Again, Sales Game. You can find all the details. I have it pop up here on the screen right now. Look at that. Go ahead. You can find it there, Sales Game. You can check it out on Amazon, as well as you can go back if you're watching this on TSE TV here. Just scroll down. You'll see some of the information in the comments area, as well as if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Podcasts, we have some show notes that we've created with the details for you. And speaking about show notes, in those show notes, we also have information about our sponsor, which will appear on the screen in 5, 4, 3, 2, look at that. Our sponsors for this podcast, you can go ahead and connect with them because they're giving you some offers which are absolutely amazing. And those offers, I have worked with them particularly for you because I know your role as a seller and some of the great things that you might want. So anyways, check it out. Take advantage of our sponsors. Also, go ahead and connect with my friend David. Check out his book. As always, I do this because I want to help you. I've been in your shoe. I want you to succeed. I want you to find more of the ideal customers. I want you to know what to say when you reach out to them, and I want you to close more deals. But most importantly, I want you to change your mindset each and every single day because you, my friend, can go out and do big things. Thanks so much for watching. You have a great day. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video today. If you enjoyed the content, I ask you to go ahead and hit that like button, that thumbs up at the bottom right-hand corner. Also, to make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. This way, we'll keep you up to date with all the latest sales strategies, latest tools, and things that are going to help you to not only find more prospects, but to close more deals. Thanks so much.